Hi everyone, welcome. Happy Earth Week. We're just going to give a few more minutes for people to trickle in and deal with any technical difficulties. So just hang tight for a few minutes. Thank you again for coming. All right, we have about 2 more minutes till we begin. Again, thank you everyone for attending and happy Earth Week. I just want to give people the opportunity to make sure they can get on. Any technical difficulties. If you've attended any of our other events, which most of you have, and I'm thankful for that, the screen has been up. I tried testing music to play in the meantime, but it didn't work. So if you could pretend to hear Imagine by the Beatles, that would be great too in the meantime. But we'll start very, very shortly. Alrighty, our attendees are leveling off, so welcome. Happy Earth Week again. This is probably the 14th time you've heard me say this, but I'm really excited. This is the 50th Earth Week. Really excited that the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences, Marine Science Graduate Student Organization's Sustainability Initiative has all come together to bring you an entire not only Earth Day, but Earth Week celebration. And so this is day 3 of our Eco Eat series. I just want to remind everyone that this is a positive community experience and we want to keep it that way. So this is a no troll zone. Anyone who does not abide by this will be dismissed without warning. And so I'm not really worried. Everyone's been really great so far. So again, thank you for keeping this a positive community experience. And with that, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, who's going to be talking to us about conscious consumption and understanding the relationship of our planet with our diets. She is an amazing eco warrior, first year PhD student. Colleen Brown, I'll let you take it from here.
Hi, everybody. So thank you for the introduction there, Kayla. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about conscious consumption and how to help the planet with your diet. So in this talk, I will be taking us through the life cycle assessment of food production practices from an ecological and economic farming perspective, farming practices and Earth's nutrient cycles, and a case study on industrial farming and moderation. So my background in undergrad, I received my Bachelor of Science in Oceanography and Environmental Science, and I had a concentration in conservation, and a case study that I did focused on agriculture and nutrient pollution, and that will be the case study that I will be introducing today. But just to get our minds rolling about our food and the carbon footprint, a helpful tool is the life cycle assessment approach developed by Staphout et al. In 2013, which you can check out here if you would like to read a little bit more about that. But in a local, ecologically focused approach, we begin the food's life cycle at the raw materials in the ground. And here we consider their footprint from energy and water use. And then this is packaged and processed at the farm or a nearby facility, and you include the energy in that. And then this is self-distributed or distributed by some vehicles to farmers markets or local grocery stores. And here we consider the gas consumption. And from there, people go to the farmers markets, they go to the grocery stores and they buy the products, bring them to their table, and from there they consume their product. And in this ecological cycle, it's normally personally composted or a company compost comes and picks it up, and those nutrients return back to the ground for more raw materials to be produced. And in an industrial or economic approach, there is large quantities of food from the ground. And here we consider the machine carbon dioxide output and large water use to produce this large yield. And from here, fleets of trucks take the large quantities of food to a processing facility where it is then packaged and processed. And here we consider a lot of the carbon dioxide that goes into packaging and a lot of the plastics used to package this as well to keep the produce and meat safe on its shipment journey. And from there, it's shipped to large stores like Walmart and bulk buy areas like Sam's Club. And from there, people come pick it up and consume it. And then most of that produce is industrial and taken by the waste management to a landfill. And so when we're thinking and going through our food that we eat and where it comes from, each of these steps to get our food to the table has a cost both economically and environmentally. So taking a look back to how we got to the agricultural system we have today, humans hunted and gathered their own food for about 200,000 years, up until about 10,000 years ago, where we created a more permanent agricultural society with the domestication of plants and animals. This has continued on to today, but the farming techniques and norms have changed over the years. So considering about 200 years ago, 90% of the US farmed their own food, but today only 2% of US citizens produce the food for the rest of us to consume. So in the US today, this is data from 2015 from the USDA. It shows that 90% of US farms are small scale, which is defined by the USDA as a farm with a gross income of less than $350,000 annually. And these small farms have a production value or a profit of about 25%. And then we have mid-sized farms and large farms, and the large-sized farms, defined as making more than $1 million a year, only make up 3% of farms, but they produce almost 50% of the production and profits here. So how does this farm distribution compare to land usage in the US today? This graphic is great. It was made by the USDA, and it helps us visualize that there was about 600 million acres of pasture and rangeland, and then there's about 500 million acres of forest, 400 million acres of cropland, and this is compared to the approximately 70 million acres of urban land. And to break this down a little bit further, agricultural land takes up about 1/5 of our country, and it's important to notice here the size of livestock feed versus what food we actually eat, what the land comes from there. And so there are many different farming techniques, but one that defines food production of today is industrial agriculture. The technological advancements in agricultural machinery allowed farmers to transition to a more focused crop with higher yield. And this led to farmers specializing in one crop and growing it on their land annually. And this is termed monoculture. And so this mass production allowed an increase in production efficiency, like a massive production efficiency increase. And the machine-based techniques allowed production cost per unit to decrease. And then this led to more crop yields. And all of this allows the goal to be met to enhance our food security. So this mass production is keeping a lot of food in the market. And monoculture farms are characterized by a low level of diversity, so a low level of genetic variability in the fields. So there's generally only one plant on the field besides some pesky weeds that get in there. And when these fields are used year after year for the same crop, it really takes a toll on the soil health over time. And so how does the crop production decline the soil health? So what we really need to do is take a look at the plant's diet. So each plant has its own unique diet demands, just like we do. So we eat more complex forms of nutrients. So we get our nutrients from fruits and vegetables and grains and meat, but plants use a lot more simplistic of a system. They take nutrients right out of the soil to grow, and they also use photosynthesis. But the soil here is its own ecosystem. There's tons of nutrients and macro microorganisms that make the nutrients available for use to grow and also help regenerate these within the system. So the nutrients are taken up into the plant, helps them grow, plant leaves fall, decay, and then these nutrients are incorporated back into the system by these microbes. But at the end of a crop season, the soil is normally depleted in the nutrients that a particular plant needed for growth. So this one plant likes a certain combination of these, just like we have our favorite foods that we always eat. And so at the end of each season, this soil is depleted in those nutrients. And so it will keep driving the nutrients lower and lower. But these soil nutrients can be regenerated and also recharged. So soil nutrients get recharged by organic material that's added back to the system and also by synthetic nutrients from fertilizers. So organic fertilizers come from the dead plant material around the crops like cover crops, or also manure from animals that tramp on the lands. And here the material, the dead organic material or the waste will go back into the soil as nutrients. Microorganisms can help take up those nutrients and make it bioavailable for the plant, and then this cycles back around. But synthetic fertilizers are often used to just feed the plant, and this is common in monoculture crop society. So they buy fertilizers that are very specific to that plant, and then they feed that plant these fertilizers. But since they're synthetic and they're not organic, the bacteria doesn't like them to help break them down. So these nutrients just get used by the plant, and then whatever is not used by the plant, it leaches out of the system because the microorganisms do not like to take it up. So that will cause these nutrients to leach out and into waterways. And so this organic side seems to be more of a regenerational sort of soil, and then this is just recharged each season. So soil decline happens because of nutrient depletion. So there's no cover crops to introduce new nutrients. There's no manure to replenish the nutrients and microbes. And this will lead to topsoil decline in health, and then this will lead to erosion. So the topsoil is very brittle, not very sturdy and held together, and so wind and water will just erode this, and this will cause the synthetic nutrient runoff into the surrounding areas, and overall soil health will be depleted after a few years. But there is a way to combat this, and it's to introduce these cover crops to monoculture fields. So this is corn grown here, and then in between are these cover crops. So crops are not the only monocultured food. A lot of where our meat comes from is from livestock production and also poultry production. And these industrial livestock and poultry farms are defined as CAFOs, or concentrated animal feeding operations, which are defined by the USDA as 1,000+ animal head units in one facility. And so CAFOs takes us to my research in North Carolina that was titled A Spatial and Temporal Analysis of Nutrient Inputs Using Isotopes in the Northeast Cape Fear River Basin, North Carolina. And I'll go into a little bit more of what I did here. So this is the study site in Eastern North Carolina. And here I'm looking at the Cape Fear River Basin, and this is majority wetlands that this watershed leads out into the ocean by. And in this area, there is the highest concentration of pig farms in the world. So this is the watershed in the black circle here, and you can see the high concentration of pig farms. And this is an image of a swine CAFO. And so inside of these facilities here are a bunch of pigs. And pigs, of course, create waste. And this waste is hosed into these large waste lagoons here. And what we're seeing is the waste being put in here and then held until it can be sprayed on the surrounding fields to lower this level and then be covered and taken up by those crops there. So it is important to study this area with high agricultural influence in a coastal watershed because these systems produce and add a lot of nutrients into an ecosystem, typically more nutrients than the ecosystem is naturally adapted to. And here we see the agriculture and livestock runoff. So these waste lagoons and also the lack of soil retention of nutrients will cause runoff into surrounding rivers. And these nutrients that are added here are limiting nutrients, which means that they're not in excess in the water. And whenever they're added, they act as this superfood for algae. So when there's runoff and excess nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus get into a system, the algae goes crazy, like nom, 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 eat up all of these nutrients and make huge algal blooms. And so these algal blooms make these mats that look like this. This is actually a stream, that's not a field. So these big blooms of algae are sometimes created by toxic algal species that are toxic to humans and also to fish. But once they become this large, they start uptaking a ton of oxygen and actually leaves the waterways pretty depleted in oxygen, which causes fish kills. They don't have a lot of oxygen in there to breathe, so they can't continue to survive. So it is crucial to determine where these nutrients are coming from so we can help mitigate the bloom issues within a watershed. And a way to trace where these nutrients are coming from is by using isotopes as tracers. So for everyone that thought they were done with chemistry forever, I'm bringing you back into it for just a moment. To regenerate or to refresh your mind, isotopes are forms of the same element, just with an additional neutron. So carbon-12 here, we're seeing the isotope of carbon-12 there is an isotope of carbon-12, but when you add one extra neutron, it becomes carbon-13. And then if you add 2 extra neutrons from carbon-12, it becomes carbon-14. So think of these as weights. As you add these neutrons, you're adding more weight to the isotope. And when you think of a plant that's photosynthesizing and wanting to use carbon in their system, what do you think is going to be the easiest one for them to pick up? Like, what would they preferentially take up? Probably the lighter isotope. I don't know about you, but if I'm lifting weights all day long to produce food, basically, I'm going to keep picking up the lighter weight and not the 50-pound weight. So different biogeochemical processes on Earth fractionate different isotopes by these weights. So they preferentially take up lighter or heavier isotopes based on their processes. So this brings us to back to the waste lagoons. So the waste lagoons are where the manure is stored, and they're actually living pools of organic matter all in here. So in the pools, there are little microbes and bacteria that live in here to help break down the waste. And this purple color is actually good, surprisingly. It's due to the purple sulfur bacteria that live in there, and this sulfur fixing bacteria help break down the organic waste, and this helps reduce the pollution potential of these nutrients. So there's sulfate reduction happening in these pools, but there's also nitrogen fixation by the microbes that end up releasing ammonia as bubbles. So that's called ammonia volatilization, and it releases these in the form of gas, and the gas phase is going to be lighter than is going to be the lighter nitrogen because it's easier for that to leave the pool than the heavier nitrogen. So it tends to be that these waste lagoons are, after they started to become treated, they are really heavy in this nitrogen isotope. That's what's left in these pools. And so that can be a signature to trace where nutrients from these waste pools are, because they're a lot heavier than anything naturally occurring. And so these nutrients often do not stay in the lagoons. So lagoon waste, like I mentioned earlier, is sprayed onto the adjacent fields to relieve lagoonal stress. And heavy rains and hurricanes that tend to circumnavigate this area often, and hurricanes normally once a year, lead to flooding of these lagoons. And this is from a hurricane here, and you can see that once was lagoons and once was streams is now just one. It's all one big water mass. And this is an issue because all the waste that was in the lagoons is now dispersed throughout the watershed. And so as these nutrients enter the waterway, we can sample these different waterways throughout the watershed to see where the nutrients are coming from by their isotopic signature. So in my study, we sampled waterways throughout the watershed for about 7 months to collect data. And what I had found was that there's a variety of nitrogen signatures, which, remember, that's the identifier of waste. That's how we can identify the waste nitrogen. And the carbon-13 is able to tell us whether this is a freshwater or estuary derived or seawater derived plant or nutrient. And here, this is the heavier nitrogen, so 10 to 25. And this is lighter here, and this is what we're looking as indicative of hog waste. And so what we see is a decent bit of these sites had nitrogen in it that was sourced from hog waste. So some of the main takeaways from this study was that the control site that didn't have any CAFOs around it, or these industrial animal farms, had no isotopic signals of waste, but in areas that were heavily CAFO saturated had high concentrations of nitrogen and this heavy nitrogen, which is indicative of waste. And the spraying seasons and hurricanes showed the highest indications of waste origin as well. And this is besides being an issue with just eutrophication, this is also an issue because national pollution laws prohibit waste from entering surface waters. And what we're seeing is that nutrients from the waste are present and damaging the ecosystem. But bringing it a little closer to home in Florida, North Carolina is not the only area that's experiencing this. Eutrophication and agricultural runoff. Florida is also really dealing with this as well. So 2 farms in Florida produce half of the US's sugar supply. So these sugarcane fields are having great economic success. I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're doing really well, but unfortunately, this is having an impact on the surrounding ecosystem because it can't sustain the heavy nutrients that are going into the system at this rate. And this is causing the red tide that I'm sure a lot of you have seen. And this will also result in the fish kills. But on a lighter note, there's monoculture in industrial farming is not the only farming technique used today. There's also polyculture farming, which provides food, but on a smaller scale, and is really a meld of traditional farming techniques but it also is combined with using technologic advanced farming equipment. And here poly means many, and polyculture means many cultures or many crops. And this is really defined by having a high biodiversity of crops, or so a lot of different crops on one land, the presence of grazing livestock and poultry coops, and is generally a closed system that does not need much synthetic help. And permaculture is a new age farming where it takes polyculture to the next level, where the farm takes care of itself as long as it's set up right. So the balance between soil, crops, insects, grazing animals, birds, predators, they all work together. in this system to supply nutrients and pest protection. So grazing animals provide soil with nutrients and microbes from their manure as it spreads across the fields. And crops being rotated seasonally diversifies the nutrient uptake on a yearly basis, and even on a seasonal basis. And this in turn results in soil longevity. And having all of the birds and insects and animals working together, they all remove natural pests. So as we've gone through these farming systems, we've got an idea of what is not sustainable and what is sustainable. So industrial farms with one main crop, such as the swine farms, have great industrial profit. But also what we're seeing is very poor soil and ecosystem success. This is unsustainable. And we're also seeing that farms that remove a lot of their agriculture have very poor economic success, but amazing ecosystem and soil health. This is also unsustainable. We need to have an economic balance within our ecosystem. But polyculture, which seems as a diverse farm, tends to have great economic success. It may not be on the multi-million-dollar industrial scale, but a nice profit for a family farm. And also it contributes to amazing soil health. This is sustainable. So sustainable farming, the key to this is really moderation. So too much of any one thing, as we all have heard, is going to become an issue. But sustainable food comes from sustainable farming, which is produced by a strong relationship between organisms and their environment. And this is organisms including humans, animals, insects, the soils, the microbes, and what our environment is. And sustainable agriculture is one that supports ecosystem function, soils, microbes, plants, and animals, and then also supports our economy. And this is by having the continuation of long-term healthy farmland for generations to come. And it also supports our personal longevity by giving us good nourishment. And together, this is people, planet, and profit working together for a sustainable farming. And in the end, this comes down to conscious consumption. So each item that we buy has an impact. And we've seen this in the life cycle assessment. And each dollar that we give tells suppliers that there's a demand for that product and to keep producing and supplying more. So being conscious and knowing where your food items comes from allows you to vote, in a sense, with your dollar for what type of system you really support and what farming practices you want to give your money to. And so it's really up to you in this sense, what you want to be able to put your dollar towards and what farms you really support. And if you would like to do a little activity after this, I am going to be doing conscious cupboards where we take a look into your fridges and your pantries. Don't worry, I won't see them, so you don't have to worry about them being messy, but we're going to look inside and help clean out and green out your pantry. And with that, thank you so much for listening to me for about 30 minutes now. I appreciate it, and feel free to join me in just a moment for the activity if there's no more questions. Thank you. I'm just going to give a couple more minutes for any questions to come in. Okay, so there is a question here asking, would crop rotation also be profitable and sustainable for the soil? So yes, crop rotation would be good. It just depends on what crops you're going to be rotating. So you want to make sure you're introducing crops that are going to regenerate the soil and have a lot of nutrients to provide. So some crops only offer a certain nutrient, and then other crops offer more. So it really depends on what you're bringing into your system and what soils you're working with. Thank you for that question. Okay. Kayla, I don't know if you want to step in for a moment.
Colleen, that was fantastic. You did an awesome job, and that's really exciting bringing in this science perspective to conscious consumption. Before we dive into the activity, we just want to have a word from Dr. Christine Todd from Miami-Dade Public Schools. Dr. Todd, would you like to say a word?
Yes, thank you, thank you. Thank you to both of you, Colleen and Kayla, for your wonderful presentation. Just want to bring greetings from Miami-Dade County Public Schools, particularly Science Department. We're also celebrating Earth Day today. We have a slew of activities on, and we really appreciate you for hosting this and bringing information to your students and to the community, which I'm sure involves our teachers and students. So it was very interesting to see how food is related to being green and being helping to sustain our earth. And yeah, just thank you very much. And I am going to be looking forward to see how we can turn that refrigerator into more of a green space, personally.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Todd. Part of the reason we really wanted to continue Earth Week is to be a resource for the community and bring us all together for Earth Week. So now I think we will move into Colleen's activity. I'm really excited that we still have activities to do. So thank you, everyone, and we'll dive in. Colleen, go ahead and take over.
All right, everyone. Let me share with you the activity. All right, so there's a couple questions coming in from the talk, but I'll address them at the end here after we go through the activity, because I know some people are on a tighter schedule and need to leave. But okay, everyone, it's time to clean out and green out your pantry. Since everyone's home, and if you have access to your pantry right now, or if you just want to follow along and take notes, feel free to do whatever is best for you at this time. So we are making 4 moves towards an eco-friendly pantry. We're looking at our food labels, we're gonna look at the packaging, we're gonna see our food sources, and we're going to tackle food waste. I know it's a big thing to tackle, but we're gonna do it. And we have a bonus of composting here. So our goal today is to lower our food print here. And how we're going to do this is, first, we're going to check our food labels. So if you want to get your pantry ready or open your fridge, maybe close it in the meantime, energy consumption, but we're going to first take it to the pantry. So one of the most unsustainable things that's really getting attention in the media right now, and also by scientists, is palm oil. So I just want to make a disclaimer here. Not all palm oil is bad, but you just need to know where it's coming from and the sources. And we'll break this down. So palm oil is used in almost everything, like bread, potato chips, ice cream, wasabi peas. I love wasabi peas, but it's in there too. And it's cheaper than most vegetable oils. So this has really increased the demand for palm oil and led to a lot of deforestation. So tons of clear cutting has happened to increase this palm oil. As it's in everything, there's a high demand. And often the names of it go in disguise. So they can be, palm oil can be recognized as anything with palm in it or anything with vegetable oil in it. So if you're looking at the back of your labels, even if you see vegetable oil, that can be passed off as palm oil and you don't really know. And vegetable oil is in a lot of things. So check your labels and see if there's anything with palm and get to really know that. And here you can see on the back, like palm and palm kernel oil. Here, Nutella, a big one, all palm oil. And if it does not have this RSPO, Certified Sustainable Palm Oil label, you can see here it's like an upside down palm tree. It's most likely unsustainably sourced palm oil. So this is the major label that you can look for, but you can do some Googling around too to see if there's any other ones that you can find, but this is the main one to be looking for. So if it doesn't have it, that's unsustainably sourced palm oil and has led to deforestation, which cuts down a lot of our trees and then is contributing to global CO2 emissions rise because those trees aren't around to take up the palm or to take up the CO2 that's in our atmosphere. And also it's causing soil loss and a lot of nutrient runoff, like what we just talked about. So next we're taking it to the fridge. So if you purchase any fish, like packaged from a store, make sure that that fish has either an ASC certified or MSC certified label. So ASC is for aquaculture, and aquaculture, if done by the ASC guidelines, is great. It's a wonderful way for fishing to take it out of the ocean into a more controlled setting and farm the fish. And so we're not depleting the natural stocks, but it has to be done in a right way, which is certified by ASC. And then if you have a MSC certified label, that's from like marine fisheries. And so you want to make sure that that is also sustainably sourced. So you can see the little fish there. So next we'll look at our produce. I know organic is expensive, but a lot of what we were just talking about is having like a lot of the monoculture issues is that it doesn't abide by a lot of like these USDA organic guidelines. So organic doesn't just mean like, oh, it's on a happy farm. It's making sure that there's soil, like soil quality is there, no antibiotics, no industrial pesticides, biodiversity is required. So it's maintaining that good soil health that's going to make our land better for more generations. So check out for the USDA organic label. That's one of the most widely recognized and not scammed sort of label. So when I say scammed, it's these natural pesticide free, not saying that those are bad labels, but they're just very unclear. The standards are not regulated across boards. And so anybody can kind of go in and buy a natural label or buy a pesticide-free label. So look for USDA organic on your produce. And if you're buying from a local farmer's market, then you're probably good. Also, what we want to make sure our labels have is fair trade. So a lot of what we buy comes from other countries and a lot of the time developing countries. And these developing countries would really like to make a profit. So working conditions, like humane conditions, are not as great. Also, what they're doing to the land is not as great, but they have to do it to make a profit to sustain their living. But this fair trade protects the producers in the developing country by like giving them a very fair wage and also helping them protect the land and waterways, which they ultimately want to do so they can give the land off to their future generations. So two fair trade labels that are really good is this person in the green holding a barrel sort of basket thing, and then fair trade with the arm. These two are really good. And you can see Ben and Jerry's has it, which is great, and some coffee beans and some fruits and produce as well. And when you're at the store, these are two helpful apps. So if you don't want to like be checking every one, just look in your app, see if like what you normally buy is on there. And you can even do this at home. So type in your labels, see like use how good and be like, is my Smucker's peanut butter sustainable? See. So second, we're going to move on to packaging. Let's take a look into both your fridge and your pantry and see if these items can be purchased without packaging. So a lot of things are packaged that shouldn't actually be packaged. I don't know if you've seen things like Trader Joe's is a bad culprit to this. So they'll have like one wafer that's wrapped in plastic, that's in a plastic container, that's in a cardboard box, and you're like, I didn't need all that. That wafer wasn't that valuable to be that heavily protected. So let's take an idea, like look around your fridge and pantry and see how much of it is in packaging, like 100%, 50%, 0%. It doesn't matter where you're at. If you're at 100%, that's a place to start as well. And let's just take note at which of these items can be purchased without packaging. So one of the big packaging hazards, and as we all know, plastic is an issue, but so many things come in plastic in these individual items that can really be bought in bulk. So issues are plastic water bottles that we see in the mock pantry over here, or individual coffee pots. They're super easy to pop in, but plastic, and you just throw them away. And then also produce bags at the grocery store. All of those little plastic bags are just used to go from the grocery store to your home, and it's not keeping the food any more clean than anybody else just touching it in the grocery store. So these are issues, but how we can knock them out is by buying in bulk for your water. So getting a 5-gallon jug is great, and going to Whole Foods has refillable water for like 20-25 cents, and buy your own refillable water bottle too. That kicks all the plastic water bottles, but having a 5-gallon jug, it's a great way to refill. Also, the reusable K-cups are awesome. You can use this thing thousands of times, and you get to pick all your different coffees that you can put in there and just dump it in, dump it out. It's great. And also those produce bags, instead of grabbing those thin little plastic bags, you can look trendy as all get out at the grocery store with these mesh bags that are made out of bamboo, and they're really cheap to buy, and you can just keep all your produce in there. And also they double as a washing bag, so when you get all of your produce from the store, it has a film of either people touching it or like plastic film that it's coated in. You can use these as scrubbing bags when you get it from the store, so even better. Yeah, also the single serve, like it's so great. And I know everybody with kids at home, like you don't have time to always prep everybody's snacks. And sometimes you just need like, oh, hungry, grab a pack and go. But really taking a second and getting some jars, you can buy in bulk like peanuts and nuts and granola and all of these things, and put them into tiny containers and have them be reused and make it fun. Get containers and do an art night. Have the kids like draw on each container, have it be theirs, and really make it fun. And yeah, so these little containers are great to be using. But overall, it seems like one of the best things that you can buy at the store is glass, as long as there is glass recycling available in your area. And sometimes glass is a really big issue in recycling because when you throw it away, it breaks. But if you have a good glass recycling in your area, that's a great option. But also, I love buying glass things because they work as your containers. So instead of going out and buying containers, that old pasta jar you used, amazing. Use it for some nuts. Like use it for buying things in bulk at the store as well. So a lot of things that we buy in packaging can be bought in stores in bulk, and you can buy your own containers or upcycle these old containers. And okay, moving on, we're gonna go into our food sources. So taking a look at your pantry and fridge, where does it come from? Like, where's your produce coming from? Where's your milk, your eggs, your fish, your meat? Do you know if this is something that was local and brought in, like local farmers sell to your grocery store, or is this more of an industrial? So this is stuff that's getting shipped in from all over, even internationally shipped in. So it can be hard to identify where these are coming from, but let's start at our produce. So what % of your food is produce in your fridge or in your pantry? So the more produce that we have in our diet, first off, is great. It's really healthy, not as much sweets and sugars, like high fructose sugars. These have sugars, but good sugars. And the more produce that we have, the less water is used, and typically the less deforestation. Really depends on what you're buying, but that's a good rule in comparison to meats in your fridge. Having more produce is a more sustainable option because you don't have any greenhouse or major greenhouse gases from things like livestock and cows and the methane, and also the large industrial machinery that goes into making those. Also, let's keep moving in the fridge. Is there any fish in your fridge? And if you don't know if it's locally sourced, maybe ask next time that you're at the store, be like, hey, where'd you get this from? And then if they don't know, bad sign. I would not buy it if I were you, because if they don't know, then it may not even be the fish that you are intending to buy. It may be mocked as something else, and they may not know what went into getting that fish there. And it would be awesome if it came from a local fishery, but not all of us live in areas where we can get good local fish. But if you're getting one from like a sustainably sourced fishery, that is great. And one way to check this website is awesome, is seafoodwatch.org. So you can type in here your seafood that you like. Say you absolutely love salmon, it's your favorite thing ever. Type it in and see for your area if that's the best choice, or see if it's a good alternative, or see if you should avoid it. So this is a great way to check, like see your fish, type it in, Seafood Watch. It's great. Also, is there meat in your fridge? Is this a locally sourced meat? Do you know if it's sustainable, or is this a big industrially bought meat? And it's hard because it's so easy to buy the cheapest option. And I know as a student, like the cheaper, the better, but also it's really important to reach out and know your local farmers. I found farmers markets where I can buy things cheaper than I can at the store. And so that's really helpful, and you're supporting somebody that's like 15 minutes away from you and it hasn't traveled halfway across the world to get to you. Yeah, check your meat in your fridge. Overall, take inventory of what items are locally sourced. If you don't know, ask your local markets to see if they know. And if they don't know, investigate. You should own your food. You're putting it in your body. Also, the next big thing, pantry waste. So how much of your pantry and fridge can be thrown away, recycled, or even composted. So waste, like what I was saying, the packaging issue. So it starts with buying things with the least amount of packaging if possible. So we can start by purchasing by not purchasing packaging that cannot be recycled. So this styrofoam for a start. So if we avoid the styrofoam that can't be recycled, it's just thrown away, that's a great next step. And then next we'll try and avoid packaging that's in plastic. Plastic can be recycled, but if we can move to this final step of getting peppers without plastic packaging and getting in these reusable bags, that would be huge, like monumental steps forward. And the more that you buy of that and the more people buying that, the stores will realize like, hey, people don't like this heavy packaging, and that is for protection. But if it's coming from a local farm, it doesn't need such heavy protection to transfer from the farm right to there. But if it's being shipped hundreds of miles, it needs more protection. But it all comes full circle to that local scale. And then the big thing is, once you have no packaging waste and all you would have is the waste from the core and the stem of your pepper, you should compost it. And if you haven't done already, or if you don't have a composting service near you, start your own compost. And I live in Miami, and I was able to start a backyard compost. So if I can do it there, I think everybody can do it that's joining in from other areas. And it really just starts with a big bin, and you can get a big bin, or I honestly messaged around Rasmus or like Rosensteel School and was like, hey, does anybody in the labs have extra jars or extra containers I can use? And so many people are like, please take these. So maybe see around if anybody has an extra bucket or a storage bin that they're not using, and go to town. So you just grab any bin or bucket. Big bottles too. I have like a huge acid bottle that I'm using currently. I washed the acid out though. And you drill holes at the top of the lid and at the bottom of the bucket. And this allows water and air to go through your system. And then you want to fill a fourth of the container with brown waste. And you can see brown is like your dry leaves, wood chips, twigs, straw, etc. And this allows a great base for your compost to start. There's dense like microorganisms in there, and it's wonderful. And then you want to add your food scraps, but you want to keep a 2-to-1 ratio of brown waste to food scraps here. So this is your perfect compost ratio. And then once you start filling with your food scraps, then layer on another layer of brown waste, then keep doing compost, and then stir this up. Keep it in a shady outdoor spot. Make sure it gets shade and rain so it can keep the soil nice and moist and keeping microbes healthy in there. And there you go. You got a backyard compost. And if you have a garden or want to start planting things, you can use this compost as the most amazing fertilizer you could ever get. And so your backyard turns into a biogeochemical thriving area. So you have these microorganisms in the compost pile, water, carbon dioxide, all working together to produce this crazy rich organic matter that you can use for farming. And or not farming, but if you want to start a farm, go ahead. But if you would like to just have plants in your backyard that are healthy, or put it on your grass even, do it. So all in all, looking through your guys's pantry and fridge, the best thing to take out of this is read your product labels and check for unsustainable ingredients and seek out these sustainable labels. And also we want to minimize purchases with packaging. It starts from that first thing that you buy. If you don't buy things in packaging, you don't have to worry about your waste. And if you can, try and purchase glass so you can upcycle it. And make sure that any of your packaging that you do buy can be recycled in your area. It really differs from place to place. And second to last, see where your food is from. Ask your local supermarkets or your farmers where they where they get their food from. Are they growing it? What's going on? So it's best off, it's a safe bet to buy local first and then buy sustainably sourced from outside areas. And last but not least, learn your recycling for your area and start a compost. Why not? And that's it. I hope you guys had a conscious fridge and pantry sweep, and hope you learned some stuff today. If there's any questions, I'm here. I'm on the Q&A to help answer. Okay, one specifically from Maria. I'll get to your original question, but she had said she missed the part about looking for glass containers and what do you recommend for Miami that we don't recycle now? Yeah, so in Miami, I would try and buy bulk as much as you can. There's different places. There's some place called Verde that is in Wynwood, that is a bulk buy area. And I know it's hard due to Corona. A lot of bulk buying is limited right now due to people touching things like in bulk, but soon that will be back up. And I think that's the best thing to do is have your own jars and bulk buy as much as you can and fill your containers at home with that. And if you can do that and just buy as minimal packaging as you can for other things that you need to buy, that'd be great. Or see if you can make it on your own. Ooh, in the Q&A, we're seeing that Valeska had noted that Boxed is great for bulk buying online. So check out Boxed. Oh, and there's a great question here to go back. It said, is there any evidence if buying organic imported food is better than buying local but not organic food in terms of emissions? And to answer that, it generally seems like buying from your local small scale farm that may not have the organic label is a lot better than organic imported foods, because most of your local farms actually don't have the money to apply and get that organic label. It's a costly process to do that. It's not so simple. It's just like, I am doing this and having somebody come check up. You have to pay to maintain that label. So your local farmer may not be labeled organic, but your local farmer may be doing all those organic things, and you eliminate that large carbon cost of driving in. And the second part, and about packaging, is challenging and confusing. To protect your produce. So there's an argument about plastic packaging being needed to protect your produce, and that's mainly if it's being shipped from far away. It needs a lot of protection, but if you have a local farmer near you, you don't need as much protection because they have their crates and they're just driving it right from their farm right to you. So minimizing your packaging, that also is a benefit of local. Okay. Also, there's a question if paper or plastic is better when you're checking out, if you forgot your renewable bag. And that is a highly contested question and answer, but from my understanding, both have benefits and both have issues. So your paper bag is actually more intensive for environmental degradation due to, if you're looking at one paper bag versus one plastic bag, due to the amount of trees and paper pulp that has to go into making that bag. And that bag is not, it can be broken down after you use it, but a lot of trees are cut down to make that bag. But plastic bags have become such a norm and such a refined process that they're actually able to create plastic bags with a smaller carbon footprint. at the end of the day. So these plastic bags in the environment will be left there for 1,000 years and won't really break down, but the paper bags will. So I would say carry as much as you can in your arms and maybe grab a paper bag. And if you have a composter, definitely grab the paper bag. If you don't, maybe grab the plastic and use it for something to put garbage in to throw away. I hope that answered your question. It's a hard one. Oh, from Ashley, there is, how common or uncommon is polyculture farming in the United States, and how can we support this practice and buy produce grown from this method? So polyculture is really, it's pretty common. I don't know the exact percentage polyculture to monoculture, but it is common in small scale farms. And if you would like to buy produce grown from this method, check out farms in your local area, to wherever you're at, say like local farms, and see what they grow. Because normally if they're smaller scale, they need to be producing multiple different things to keep a profit up. So look around you and see what's going on. And also, yeah, just look up polyculture farms near me. Okay, and Tori asked a question that the preferred oil is palm oil over vegetable oil. And is this preferred over any type of vegetable oil, including corn oil or olive oil as well? To the best of my knowledge, that's a great question. And I think palm oil is preferred over almost everything, or at least it was like 5 years ago, because it was so cheap to manufacture. But I don't know how it has changed and what the current status is right now. That's a wonderful question, and I'll look into it and can maybe get back to you on a later date about that. Thank you for that question. Okay, so I think that wraps up all the questions, and thank you so much to everybody for being so engaged.
All right, thank you, Colleen, and thank you everyone for participating in our Day 3 Earth Week Eco Eats. It is Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. We have a killer sustainability panel coming to you later with a lot of awesome local sustainability leaders. It is our main event for the week, so I hope to see you there. We also have 2 more days of activities. So tomorrow's Eco Eats focuses on diversity in the environment. Friday is policy with climate change, right? So a lot more. We also have bingo tomorrow and a sip and share on Friday. So again, thank you, Colleen, for being an eco warrior science queen. We appreciate it, and happy Earth Week, everyone.